Hi, I'm Dolly Vasta, and welcome back to Dolly's World. You know, over the last 22, 23 years we've been on, I've covered a multitude of subjects. I've covered the arts and animal life, health and medicine, and the environment. And my guest today really embodies all of these. And I'd like to introduce him to you now. He is Dr. Mark Newkirk. He is owner, director of the Margate Animal Hospital and Alternate Care Center in Margate, New Jersey. Mark, thank you for coming all this distance.
You're welcome, my pleasure.
When I read through all this information, I was absolutely fascinated because I love animals and what you do and your thoughts on alternative care. And what I wanted to ask was, because I have so many questions here, why did you decide to do alternate care when there are so many modern advances in medicine?
Well, that's an excellent question, probably the first one I usually get asked, and the answer's a little bit long, but coming out of the University of Pennsylvania, trained in traditional medicine and surgery, I practiced for about 15 years just doing that, and it served me very well. But over that period of time, I came to realize slowly that there was this whole group of patients that no matter what I did, no matter where I sent them, to the university, to a specialty hospital, there was a group of patients that just never got better, or they ended up on constant antibiotics, or they ended up on constant steroids. And we all in medicine know this is no good for you and is going to cause you problems. But bottom line, when it all boils down to, that's really all we have is antibiotics and steroids. And I just decided there had to be something else that would start to help this group of patients that I had. And it started me on a journey of self-learning because there are no schools out there you can really go to. And the first place I really started was nutrition because that made sense to my Western-trained brain because I can understand vitamins and proteins and that kind of a thing. And what I found really just shocked me about what's going on out there in the pet food world today and the amazing things of just changing the diet of these animals and watching a lot of them recover just from food is just unbelievable. And so from there, I got some confidence to go explore other little less traditional things, maybe some things that are a little harder to understand, chiropractic, acupuncture, herbs, homeopathy. And now, 5 years later, we have what I call a complementary practice, and that is we take the best that traditional medicine has to offer. There are times that antibiotics and steroids are necessary. It's in the chronic case where these animals can't get off of these drugs that alternative medicine really shines, and actually blending the two together, taking the best of both worlds and treating the whole patient, hence the word holistic medicine, has made a dramatic difference in the health of my patients overall, and in many cases we've gotten them off the antibiotic and steroid merry-go-round, and they're living controlled with alternative therapies which really don't have the side effects, and they're doing much, much, much better.
Don't you think the word holistic scares people? The word holistic to many, I think, brings up the idea of some kind of crazy medical cult. And once it's explained to them, and it's not really new. Alternative medicine is old.
That's true, and that's where I start with a lot of my patients. We try to tell them, well, you know, acupuncture's been around for 6,000 years in China.
So have herbs.
Just because it's not in America doesn't mean it doesn't work. And herbs, most all of our early drugs are derived, and still today, are derived from plants, and they're derived from, well, penicillin from mold and that kind of a thing. So the natural medicines have created the, quote, new medicines only because now we're smart enough to figure out what's in that plant to create the drug. The problem is sometimes that drug creates the side effects because in the plant are things that take the side effects of that substance away. So herbs are really the original medicines. And if you go back in the early 1900s, in any medical textbook, they were full of herbs and how to treat patients.
Let's talk about some of the herbs. I think that is funny. You had one there, plantain. Now, I always think of plantain as a small banana that you fry.
Right.
Is it the leaf of that?
It's depending what you're trying to use it for, there are different combinations. But in general, what you want to use with the herbs are the whole plants, unless the herbalist has this figured out that what you're after is in the leaf. And We use it a lot for wound therapy. It works very, very well.
Oh, really? And then you had St. John's wort, which is highly touted today for anxiety.
Yeah, this is one of the new, quote, new things
Yes,
for
yes.
replacing
New
the
old.
Prozac and all of those things. And it works really well. The problem that we see is that anybody and their brother can make a St. John's wort. There really is very little regulation on these types of products, and that's part of the problem. And that's where part of the holistic thing gets a bad name. You can go in the GNC or go into the health food store, and there are 15 St. John's wort. Well, how do you know which one to take? And are any of them any good? Just because it's sitting on the shelf doesn't mean it's any good. So there again, you really need to find a doctor who understands what's going on with this, because he will have the resources to find the proper herbs. There are companies that do make the herbs correctly and have them standardized. That's another big problem, having them standardized and having the right source for it. So herbs work really well. So if people are listening and try to say, that doesn't work, it's because you picked it out yourself.
Right.
Go find a doctor and you'll find probably a different result.
What about now the Bach flower remedies that you were discussing in your literature?
Well, when I graduated...
Which is wonderful, because I love lavender.
Yeah, if anybody had told me when I graduated at the University of Pennsylvania 20 years ago that I would be prescribing flowers, I would have said, you're absolutely crazy. And this was one of those therapies that I didn't try for a long time because I really thought, this is really crazy. And suffice to say, again, the proper sources and then matching the symptom. That's the other thing that's very important, matching the symptom to the emotion. We use these to treat emotional problems in animals. We prescribe flowers all the time now, and it's just amazing to me how well they work.
There are a lot of animal owners, I don't think who understand just how emotional animals get about what's going on in the home.
They very much do.
And the sensitivity they have as to how you, their owner, feels.
They understand, they really do, and I'm sure everyone's experienced that. Have we recognized that as an emotion, as a bonding? Hopefully so. And veterinarians are recognizing that more and more. The problem is if we have an emotional problem, let's say an animal being aggressive or urinating around the house, the only choices we have are to reach again for the drugs, the Prozac
Right.
and the Elavil and Xanax and all of these, and we know inherently this is not good. Part of the problem is the owner wants the problem solved
Immediately.
today. Today. So
Or yesterday.
Yeah. So certainly we also need to counsel clients and anyone watching that they must understand an alternative medicine, it being not a drug. So you take a Valium and an hour later you're sleepy or you're mellow. It doesn't work that way. Now we have some things that do work that way, homeopathy for example. But
Exactly what is homeopathy?
well, homeopathy is a different type
Before
of science.
our audience takes the wrong word from the homeopathy.
Homeopathy is a different type of medicine, and actually was an extremely important part of medicine here in this country, even in the early 1900s and 1920s. In fact, Hahnemann Hospital in Philadelphia is actually named for the father of homeopathy, Samuel Hahnemann. It's not named for some big doctor scientist. This was the high-tech medicine of the day. And homeopathy, just like drugs are a type of medicine and herbs are a type of medicine, homeopathy is a type of medicine. You can make a homeopathic remedy from plants, from animals, from viruses, from bacteria. We are treating cancer with homeopathic vaccines by taking some of the cancer cells from that patient and creating a homeopathic remedy. And it's part of what we do. It's alternative medicine. When we're dealing with a patient, we don't just say, well, we're just going to do this. It's that blending, and that's really where it works. The problem is finding a doctor who understands all of the different modalities and is able to blend them together. And not forget the traditional workup. We still do lots of blood tests and x-rays and surgeries. You got a cancer, if you can cut it out, you cut it out. So we're not abandoning what we do. We're blending other things together, and these animals are just doing much better.
Let's talk about this nutrition. You touched on it briefly before. And I have heard about it, as I told you earlier. My son had called me from Vermont, and they had 3 of the most beautiful cats. And they had been put onto this by a vet up there, and he said to me, "Mom, have you ever heard of this?" And I said, "No." And 2 days later, we booked you into coming here today, so it's kind of ironic. But it was about breaking down and, first of all, mixing. How they did it with him was mixing food, meat, but it was cooked meat, just plain old cooked meat, with the regular food to introduce him to this. And then eventually, along with plenty of vegetables and fruits if they enjoyed them, and then eventually go into raw meat. And I said, "You're not having a problem, chopping up raw chicken?" But isn't that a problem because it hasn't been through a process? Don't they process raw meat to make it less toxic, and doesn't cooking it make it less toxic?
Well, no, actually, those are some common fallacies, and the other common fallacy is that if we feed them raw meat, they're going to get salmonella, E. coli, etc.
Right, right.
What people forget is these are not little humans. These are carnivores in nature. And if those 3 cats of your sons somehow got lost in the wild, they're going to have to catch mice, and they're going to have to catch birds, and they're going to adjust very well, and they're not going to sit out there with little frying pans and be cooking them over the fire.
No little spit with marshmallows
That's right.
on the side?
And sometimes I have to get a little silly with clients like that to make them understand. This is how nature set them up. We humans have put them on these fake, false diets, which most commonly are based on corn and soybeans and byproducts, which is really the junk of meat. Mm-hmm. I do a whole 1-hour lecture on this with documentation. When I first learned this, it just horrified me.
Well, it horrified me just reading what you had written.
Yes.
Here.
Yes.
Because I thought, here, I love my dog. I adore him. I think I'm doing right by him. Am I?
Well, if you're like most people, you have them on a brand name commercial diet, and certainly, without mentioning names, but I have labels from all of them, and we dissect them in this 1-hour lecture we do, and we teach people how to read a pet food label. We show them where the labeling loopholes are, and there are millions of them. And the problem is, in my opinion, most every commercial brand out there is junk. They're using corn and soybeans as a protein base, which is wonderful if you're a cow. It's wonderful if you're a human, but these are carnivores. They need a meat base.
Meat.
The problem also is they put in byproducts. Byproducts are very cheap sources of protein, and basically a byproduct is, the definition of a byproduct is anything can be identified to that animal. So a chicken byproduct, for example, can include beaks, feathers, claws, feet, intestines. There's protein in that, but I would suggest to you that protein is not very usable to the animal, number one, and if you put a bowl of feathers and beaks and feet on the floor, the animal's not going to eat it. In these foods are put also additives, preservatives, chemicals. We now have warehouses, PetSmart, etc., with stacked to the rafters of dog food, and we know in the warehouse behind the public sees there's another rafter stacked, and then the tractor trailers outside are stacked. Now, how can these not have preservatives, additives, chemicals in them?
Well, it's
They're
true.
gonna go bad.
It's like a huge box of Twinkies, which will be good in
Exactly.
100 years from now. Those Twinkies will be as good.
Same problem.
Mm-hmm.
And people just don't know. And unfortunately, truthfully, veterinarians don't know either. Our nutrition course was about that much of our entire education, and sponsored by the pet food companies. So we learned what we were taught in school, just like you learned what you were taught in school, and you assumed that was correct, and you came out and that's what you did if you're a teacher or a lawyer or whatever. We're no different. So I'm not here to veterinarian bash either, because for 15 years I said, don't give them table food. You'll screw up the
Which
nutrition.
is what most of us have been
Exactly.
told.
And when you really learn what's going on, that's probably the stupidest statement in the world. You'll screw up the nutrition. The nutrition is so screwed up in the pet food, it's ridiculous. So we advocate, first of all, switching to what I call a holistic pet food, because the word natural in a pet food bag means absolutely nothing. It's a marketing loophole as well. So we go to holistic-based dog food. And there are very small companies out there that do make them. And if anybody can go to my website and they'll see lists of names on there. I'm not out to promote any of them in particular. I'm just, there they are. Some of the health food stores will carry some of these brands too, and your smaller specialty pet shops will carry some of these brands. Some of them you can order on the internet and they show up right at your house. So we start with, first we need to get off the junk pet food, because it's very difficult to balance a raw food diet. We need trace minerals, fatty acids, amino acids, certain vitamins, etc. So we like to use a holistic based dog food, so we're getting those kinds of things. And then to that we add real raw foods. The word is raw. Raw meat is the natural form for these carnivores. Now you do have to introduce it slowly. If you give the dog a half a pound of raw meat, he's going to have diarrhea.
Or throw up all over your rug.
Right. That's not salmonella poisoning. It's you gave him something that he hasn't seen before in a large quantity. It's no different, but I'm sure everyone who's watching has been told by their doctor, when you change foods, you mix the old and the new together for a few days, because if you change foods from brand X to brand Y, you're going to probably get diarrhea. It's the same story. It's not E. coli. The difference within 30 to 60 days is nothing short of amazing.
Really? God, you know, I had once had a vet say to me, you know what the problem is, Dolly, is that we're talking about food. And he said, people are swayed by the commercials.
Exactly.
The commercial is good to you. And it's true. I mean, as much as I understand the world of television, I've been in it for years, I can be just as swayed by a very funny commercial that you remember when you go to the pet food store.
Of course. And part of that price of that bag of food is paying for that advertising.
It's paying for that advertisement.
And paying for the packaging, that nice looking little bag with the little puppies and the little kid on the front. Sure, we're all swayed by advertising. Don't you think for 1 minute that these people don't know that. It's not some guy sitting up there and say, well, why don't we just put a puppy and a kid on our bag and let's put it in blue. Baloney. You know, they hire marketing firms and research firms to find out what's going to catch the consumer's eye, so you buy that. So it's no different from if you're seeing an advertising for shoes or clothes. Pet food is a huge business. Right now it's about $12 billion a year. It's a huge industry. Lots of competition, tons of brands when you go in the supermarkets.
Oh, yeah.
They have to get you to buy the food. First step is advertising.
Make it look
promotion.
good to you.
Exactly.
I understand the theory, I do, and of course over the years I've learned what he can eat and what's good, you know what I mean, what has agreed with him, so I kind of work it from that angle. And lately, I must admit, we do give him more and more table food since I've talked to Tom. I haven't gotten to Roy yet. I'm thinking about it and working on it. But let's go on, because you have another one, which is orthopedic manipulation.
Correct. This is a form of chiropractic. It's
Right.
done with what's known as an activator device, which is this device that I've brought here today.
Oh, I wondered whether you were giving me a shot or not.
This is used, some of your viewers who have a human chiropractor may use this. It's a different type of chiropractic device. And we use this particular one in the animals for a couple of reasons. One is, certainly I'm adjusting animals that weigh 2 pounds up to 200 pounds, and you can imagine my hands on a 2-pound animal trying to do adjustments. It could be a little too much force, number one. We could be adjusting the entire back with my whole hand rather than that one particular vertebrae. And there are techniques to do that with your hands, but this makes it so much easier.
It's like a caliber,
Well, it's...
isn't it? That kind of...
Well, you can design this with different, you can tool this up and down, so
Right.
you can design this for different kinds of animals. So this.
So in other words,
this will
what do you do with it?
This will do a horse as well as a tiny little 2-pound kitten by adjusting it, okay? And it's not about force. Most of the time when we adjust an animal, just put your hand out. It's not about force. There's
No.
really nothing there
There's
at all.
nothing there. I felt nothing.
What we're doing is we're timing the nerve impulse as it goes through the spinal cord.
Right.
When if this were to be the vertebrae, or if you feel along your own back,
Right.
you'll feel the spines, what are called the spines of the vertebrae.
Right.
So let's say if I'm a 2-pound kitten, all my spines are going to probably be about that close, and my hand's going to be really huge on this.
Right.
So with this device, I can do this one or that one. And if this one is tilted this way, I can come to the side, or I can come from the front or come from the back. So we get a much more accurate, in my opinion, adjustment of the particular area that's a problem. And typically we find 2 or 3 areas in an animal. The other thing that's very unique to animals that people don't have is they have a very specific reflex on their skin. So you've seen the reflex when a fly lands on your dog's coat or your horse's skin, and the horse flicks the skin. Well, we can't do that.
It ripples.
Yeah, we can't do that. Now, the interesting thing is, if there is a problem, let's say right here, for example, and I do this, that reflex is going to ripple. If there's no problem here, there's no reflex. So now I can actually use this to diagnose, well, it's this vertebrae and not that one. If I have my hands on that, it's going to be pretty darn tough. The interesting thing, too, is then when this ripple goes away after a few treatments, now I know my problem's under control. So it's a very, very unique device to be using with the animal, partially because we're dealing with so many different sizes of animals, and then particularly because of this reflex, so we can really get a good gauge of what's happening.
Well, dogs in particular have usually, the larger breed, have problems with their hips and arthritis.
Correct. We see a lot of problems either when they're very young, when they're 8, 9, 10 months of age and they're starting out with this, and then of course when they're older. But, and we go back to the holistic concept here, there is a spine attached to these hips, there's a pelvis attached to these hips,
Right.
and there's a dog attached to these hips. Always, when we find a hip problem, we're going to find a spine problem. And so we need to do adjusting of the spine as well as the hips in this case to get the hips back in line, the spine back in line, so everything works as a unit again. And of course, at the same time, we're adding the good nutrition, we're adding glucosamine chondroitins, we're adding homeopathy or herbs, or pending, sometimes drugs if they're really painful. And our goal is then to get them maintained on supplements, good food, chiropractic care, and off the drugs. And we're very successful at doing that.
It's just, as you said before, though, it takes time. And I think your patient's parents, so to speak, owners, I hate that word owner. I prefer to think of them as parents, really have to think, well, this is not going to cure him tomorrow.
Correct.
But, and actually, from what I've read, nothing is a cure that you do. It's a rounded of just keeping you in a good state, a healthy state, but it's not a cure, so to speak. Am I
Correct.
right or wrong?
Correct. There is no cure for arthritis, for example.
Tell me.
Okay. So, but can we control this animal's disease with either steroids or drugs like Rimadyl, which have side effects, or
Right.
can we control this disease with chiropractic, nutrition, homeopathy, herbals, and create a healthier body? Because the drugs, of course, have side effects as well, and they're not doing any kind of healing. They're just covering the pain. And there are times when you have to cover the pain. There are times when I have to take an aspirin. But if we can maintain this animal in a healthier state and get the rest of the body helping us out by getting a good diet in, it's very important for raw proteins whenever we have any kind of chronic illness.
Really?
It's the building block of healing in the animals. All of your immune system is protein-based. All of these dogs with the bad hips in the back, what's going on with the muscles? The muscles are getting atrophied because they're not being used very well. We need to build strength, and we're not going to build strength in a carnivore by feeding them corn and soybeans. We're just not going to do it.
But they also need to exercise.
Well, they do, and here again is a controlled-based
so do we.
exercise. Right, it's a control-based exercise. You can't take a dog with severe arthritis and hip problems and go out and run him 3 miles. You're going to cripple him.
Right.
So the first thing we have to do is, again, get the spine aligned, get the hips aligned, get the healing process started. Because if I give you enough prednisone or steroids, you won't feel any pain. You'll go out and run, and you're just going to do damage to your joints again.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. That's the problem. So the animals look good, and the point you made is very true. People want the quick fix. The interesting thing is we've spoiled you in veterinary medicine. You come in, your animal's sick, first of all, you probably get an appointment today. You probably have a diagnosis today, you have blood work answers today, you have x-ray answers today, and not only today, within maybe an hour. And then you expect to have the pill, which fixes them in a day. When's the last time you got an appointment, x-rays, blood tests, and a diagnosis in an hour in the same day on you or me?
It's like dream on.
Right, 3 weeks to get in.
Right.
And then 3 weeks to get blood tests. It's very frustrating. You know, I go to the physician, get myself checked. I'm calling the doctor 2 weeks later, where's my blood test results? So if you're going to approach alternative medicine, and especially in veterinary, we're used to waiting for us. And our animals, we have spoiled you. We veterinarians have spoiled you owners, because we're darn good. You need to take a step back and understand what we're doing. And that is an issue many times. You've got to let people know that, and it's going to take a while.
I've been given the signal that we only have 1 minute, so I can't believe where the time went. But if you had one thing to say to pet owners, what would it be?
Change the diet.
Change the diet?
Number one.
Stop looking for a fast fix?
Well, you got to stop looking for a fast fix, but there are a lot of animals that appear to be healthy out there that really are not. You got to change the diet, get off the preservatives, the additives, the chemicals. We all know that's bad, and it's in every commercial food out there, almost every commercial food, I should say. And we've got to get them on a meat-based food, which is very few of the commercial foods out there. You make that one change, and the animals that you think are healthy, they're going to be healthier.
You know, Mark, you have given not only myself, but I think an awful lot of our audience who have pets and who love their animals, great pause and something to really think about and ponder about and hopefully maybe try. And you know, once again, I thank you so much for coming up from our gate. It's such a distance.
You're very welcome.
It really is. I hope you have enjoyed yourself, though, really, as much as I have enjoyed
Any place I can go
talking to you.
get the word out.
And to all of you out there, I hope you enjoyed the show today. I know I did, and I hope you were informed as well. I'll see you all next month. And in the meantime, take care.